Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Morbid Symptoms podcast. And this is our weekly sex versus gender identity war update. When we cover what happens when ideology collides with reality, when the rights, privacy, and security of women, meaning adult human females, clash with the feelings and desires of men who claim to identify as women, whatever that means. We cover the arenas where these clashes play out: sports, bathrooms, changing rooms, prisons, hospitals, rape crisis centers, and language in general, meaning this push we see everywhere. You might have noticed for quote unquote gender neutral terminology, which in effect erases women as a category that refers to human females to accommodate men and support expanding the gender industry. So, in a nutshell, we highlight the consequences of placing gender ideology above material reality, the fact that women are adult human females. So thank you for joining us as we look into these issues and their impacts on women's rights and spaces and language, but also society as a whole, of which we're half of and give birth to all of, etc. Anyway, hello, Tanya. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, hanging in there. It's Halloween now.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah. I'm just gonna make
my favorite holiday.
I like it, but of course I grew up I'm American. I grew up in the States, so it's a whole different thing than it is in places I've been now. The other countries I've lived, there's pockets of it, but it's not like the whole thing that goes on in the States. I don't know how it's like in Canada. Does Canada have the whole
fantastic
whole shebang? Yeah,
I think
it's
it's
fun.
the best country for Halloween.
Yeah.
It's a chocolate holiday, which is always nice, right? You can always enjoy eating. Love all the little chocolate.
Yeah, the candy.
Yeah. That's my
celebration.
celebration.
Yeah. Anyway, my two of my kids are out and about this evening, but one, for whatever, the plans fell through. The details are sketchy, so I said, well, you can hang out with me. And she says she's ready to watch a scary movie. She wants to watch Scream. I'm like, all right, we'll give it a go.
Right.
If at any point you start thinking this isn't exciting at all and I'm not going to be able to sleep, then do signal that and we'll
she's going to be sleeping with you tonight.
Watch something different. She's like, no, I'm ready. I'm like, okay. So we'll see.
Scream's not that scary.
Yeah.
You know, our generation is what? Children of the Corn? Come on.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember my first scary movie, some crazy parents. I was at a sleepover and they let us watch Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah. And I think I was 10 and I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
My parents were like, thanks. Anyway. Yeah, that freaked me out for some reason. Anyway, so a segue from Freddy Krueger to men who identify as women. Let's see. I mean, what can we say? So today we're going to focus more on
say nothing.
Anyway, we're going to focus on the legal front. There's because of course, big surprise, you can't really have woman referred to human females as well as men who want to identify as women. That's a bit of a contradiction, quite one. And so it's not surprising that we're seeing cases finally end up in courts trying to hash this out, because there's enough women and others who are willing to take the slings and arrows and the various tactics to be like, no, we're not going to just be nice and decide it's okay for us to change our clothes or shower or pretend that these men are actually women. So we'll see what happens. But of course, a lot of this starts because you have governments who have passed various laws and policies around something called gender identity without fleshing through what this will mean for those of us who aren't who don't subscribe to this ideology. What happens when people who want to identify as the opposite sex collide with those who of that actual sex who aren't interested in affirming their persona or fantasy or fetish or mental illness, whatever you want to call it. Because in the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me what that is, because our point of view is that, yeah, good luck with that, all best, but men aren't women. So
Easy, right? Easy
you would
peasy.
think.
Yep, you'd
But here
think.
we are. So let's cover some things that happen when gender identity hits reality. So a while back, there was this brouhaha in England, and there's this company Butlins. I'm going to say it's Butlins. I don't know if it's Butlins, but it looks like Butlins to me. And basically, from what I gathered, it's some sort of like it's some sort of resort company. So they focus on being like family focused events and resorts and whatnot. And apparently there was some concert or some musical festival going on in one of these Butlins resorts or centers. And there was a kerfuffle in the ladies' room, and a lead, I think it's a lead. I don't know how he says this, a lead. So a lead posted, so last night at Bang Face 10 at Butlins, security guards violently dragged 5 trans people, males, one of which is a friend of mine, out of the women's toilets last night. Sicking.
Sicking. That's what it says.
I think, transphobic behavior. Full story of my friend's Insta. Call the number. And
Wow,
so
you
they were
picked a good
trying.
one there. It's like in
Yeah,
code.
yeah. And a lead is on. It's a picture of a lead on the right.
Oh, she's lovely.
Yes. I mean, I don't know how I could tell if this was a man or a woman without
There's no
a
way to tell.
certificate telling me. Uh,
No way to tell.
But okay, so they're sounding the alarm. Update from Bangface Festival. Butlins security just dragged 5 trans people out of the women's toilets, got slammed against the wall and dragged downstairs for intervening. Literally everyone in the women's was shouting at security to F off and let people pee. Sure they were. Security escalated the situation without any physical provocation. They called in 10 security guards as reinforcements before starting to drag people out. Thinking it'd be good for people to flood the Butlins Skegness office with calls tomorrow, asking why their security are assaulting people in the toilets when they give the number.
Right, because he wants everybody to call. And he probably will get a whole stream of people calling to defend him. All he wants to do is pee.
Now, first of all, I'd be surprised if there was this many security guards at Butlins, but okay. But I like the language trans people. So as if there's males, females, and then a third actual material category that qualifies as a trans person. It's just a word, people. Okay. Anyway,
just a suffix, a prefix.
So this is calling out, and so here's one of the trans people who was asked to who was using the ladies' room at Butlins and was asked to leave. Security guards removed 5 so this is from a security guards removed 5 cross-dressing men, including this one, from the women's toilets at Bangface, which is I mean, the
What a
names
name, Bangface.
yeah,
Jeez.
a dance festival at Butlins Skegness this weekend. The men responded with a coordinated protest, and the security guards have now been removed.
Huh. No kidding. So these people lost their jobs because
Well,
of these.
I don't know what. Yeah, this is a ex post, so I don't know the all the details. But Butlins got right back to Elid and said, "Hi, Elid. We're aware of the incident and take things like this very seriously. We are in contact with those involved, and please be assured we are looking into this matter further, Beth." And another Facebook. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
all
you
she
go
had
ahead.
to say was, "We're aware of this incident and don't come back to Butlins ever."
Yeah.
Keep dirty friends away
We
too.
have, we have 2 bathrooms. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, but who knows? Who knows? So
Yeah.
another ex post said, You can be family-centered butlins or fetish-centered. You can't be both.
Right.
And it's the same thing. It's that either we're going to decide, which is crazy, which wouldn't work
Right.
really, but who knows? Who knows wouldn't work? Either we're going to decide that, or go back to to reality that there are two sexes, men and female,
Mm,
men and women, male and female, and that some spaces and activities or language are distinguished on those bases. Or we're going to get into this madness of this thing called gender identity. We can't have both,
right.
which these incidents highlight. Yeah. And I think
Totally.
it's much. Go ahead.
Especially, look, I just pulled up Butlin's Skegness, and I'm not going to spend all my time looking at it, but the header says, "Discover great UK family breaks in
Yeah.
Skegness." So, like, without looking into it, yeah, family is what they obviously are trying to get, but
Hmm.
they'd also like a bit of the fetish.
Yeah. Who
And
knows?
yeah, not a fan.
So that's one thing. So people were talking about this, and I don't know what the result was, but there was a bit of at least there was a back and forth going on X for us, for those of us standing on the sex side of this of this battle, this
Right,
politics,
right,
saying basically wanting to know, like, asking two things, wanting to be like, did you really let go of these security guards because they were um asking men not to use trying to get men out of the women's room, and what's your actual policy?
right.
If I go with my family to Butlins, am I going to have to
Which they
worry
want,
about men pretending to be women in the girls' room and the ladies' room?
right? I mean,
And
this
I'm
is,
not you're a mom too. Not that you have to be a mom to be concerned
yeah,
about
yeah.
this,
No,
but I'm not a pearl clutcher. But I would be very interested to know.
yeah.
I want to have confidence that it's not the policy that anyone who that guys can go into the women's room.
5 at a time yet, 5 at a time. So if I
Yeah.
take my daughter to the family resort Butlins at Skegness, and I send her to the toilet, do I have to go in with her? How many of
Yeah.
us have to go in if there are 5 men in their fetish costumes in the women's toilet? How many of us have to go in? You know, we wanna pee too, maybe.
Mhm.
You know, like, it's just unbelievable. It's so stupid.
Well,
And
and
then
on
they
that note, I had I won't say any names,
Hmm,
but I came across there's a pretty well known podcaster from the States who's very much on the left, but she's very much a TRA, all in on trans rights. And we were having a discussion, and she was just uh, was in England, and I just happened to cross paths with her when I was having dinner with a friend, and she brought up George Galloway and like, what's with him and the trans issue? And so we got on this, and I was saying, and it was immediately like, well, how does it affect you? How does this affect you? And I go, and I always think this is so funny. It's like, well, how do you mean? How does it affect me?
yeah.
So I gave some actual examples, and one of the things I said is like, well, you know, I have 3 kids, a son and 2 daughters, and they're at the
Mhm.
age now. My youngest 2 are girls, where I can let them go to the bathroom on their own. So if we're out and we're at a restaurant or a theater or someplace, if they want to go to the bathroom, they can go on their own. But
Right.
now, when you have this gender neutral thing, and this idea that anyone people with guys who say they are trans can go into the bathroom, then now I feel like I need to go with them. And she's
Yeah.
like, well, and this is what she used on me. This was her Jedi logic. She's like, well, but you're okay with your son going into the men's room? And her logic was that if you're concerned about your kids being around men, why aren't you also concerned about your son going into the men's room? And I go, well, 2 things. He's a guy, and and that's when he was 17 by now. So, when he was younger, yeah, there was a certain age when he would also either go with me because he was younger. And there's that rule that to a certain age, women can take their sons in the bathroom with them. And we
Yeah, when
all
it's
kind of
shown.
know when and both us and our sons know when that time has passed. And then they go with their dad, or you go and you wait outside men's room for them to come out. It's not a big deal.
Right. It's not a
But I'm
big
like,
deal.
but also I would put men who would go into the women's room in a different category than men who would not.
Totally.
Just saying.
No kidding.
But
It's a strange.
she really thought she had me on that.
That's a little strange though. That's a
Like it's
you
an
know.
irrational fear. Like it's just some weird thing with us that we have an issue with men who are pretending to be women in our public bathrooms with our kids.
I think that just means she never thought about it. She never
Probably.
spent like, a couple of minutes actually thinking, like just a couple of minutes. It's even in Seattle airport, and this is years ago, and I was in the women's toilet and I saw signs inside the toilet stalls that said, if you're being trafficked, or you can call this number, or you can alert. I can't remember, it was years ago, but I mean, it's inconceivable that this lady that you spoke to would have never, like, she just must have been like, I don't hear anything.
Well, and
It just
also it was
too
the
weird.
thing that it's not just, yeah, it's a security thing, but it's also a privacy thing. We
Yeah.
don't want men in there.
No.
Not because we think every man's a rapist or a perv, just no men. And the idea, but it was really funny. Like, why don't you go with your, if men's the problem, then why don't you go with your son to? And I'm just like, really, you want to think about that for a bit? You really can't understand the distinction.
Bless her. She's never been threatened by anything in her life. She never found anything threatening ever.
Yeah.
She's had a charmed life. She grew up in a garden.
Oh, and even when it comes to prisons, she was all about focusing on but it's so dangerous for trans women in prison. I'm like, well, why is that women's prisoners' problem?
That's the language doing the heavy lifting, hey? Trans women. They're women. They're special women.
Anyway, so she would say she's a feminist, she's a socialist, she's all these things, but she's rah, trans women are women. It's crazy. To me,
she's a silly person. Yeah, that's really silly. I don't respect that at all. It makes me wonder what she's good at, because it's not thinking. That's so
here's
really
another instance. Trans teachers must be allowed to use same showers as female colleagues, schools told. So here's the thing where it comes in. So once again, like you mentioned, the heavy lifting of the word trans women, and why we should really not use it because it confuses people. It's rehypnol, yeah. It's like it's a gender speak mind trick. Because the logic is that if you tell a man who identifies as a woman that he can't use the women's room, guess what you're doing then? You're discriminating against their gender identity.
Oh, I know, that's the worst thing you could possibly do. What about their human rights? Stop genociding them. My God. If they were going to use this photo, the Telegraph, October 18th, they should have, I've seen a graphic with I'm just pointing at the screen for no reason. I'm not very good at this. If they use that graphic, I've seen one with the female sign, the circle over and there's a big penis shape coming out under the screen. Like, they should have used that so that we could all really understand what we're looking at right away. Because this sounds like it could be, the young woman who thinks that she's a non-binary, or she thinks she's a boy, but they actually mean everybody, and they mean the ones with the penis shape emerging from the skirt.
Well, they mean guys like this
bang face
person.
And like his name,
this person. Face, how dare you tell them they can't shower in with the other ladies?
Poor pedals, their feelings.
It's very unfair. And here's one that we're going to Sex Matters is this isn't one that came in the news I think last week. So NHS, which is the National Health Service England training, calls staff transphobic if they won't share toilets with the opposite sex. We wrote to them calling on the CEO to recall and review training and bring it into line with the law.
Oh, good for them.
So again, there's this, you really, and this is also where the gender speaker, the double speak mind trick comes in, because a lot of this at the school level and at organizations, it's presented as training, as education.
Right.
So they'll have these people to come in and train you and educate you about gender and gender identity and how to be inclusive with our trans
Yeah.
colleagues and all this stuff. And what all that implies is there's that it's all getting the cart before the horse, and it's implying that there's that um, this idea called gender identity is somehow more important
Mm.
or supersedes male or female, and it doesn't. Oh, well, it does if you act like it does. I mean, if you talk like it does and act like it does, and in effect it does, whether if it's, just a notion or not. But you really have to be careful. And you see this all the time because it's a niche industry now, that a
Totally.
lot of the people who have these bespoke gender identities are educators. So they're
Yeah.
activists and
Sure.
educators. It's like,
There are a lot of
what are you
jobs.
educating me about?
There are a
It's
lot of people whose
indoctrination.
livelihoods, yeah, their livelihoods will be destroyed if this blows away. I mean, I don't ever want to chase someone out of her job or his job,
No.
but there are a lot of jobs, and they're getting paid for what? For saying that men are women? They're getting paid for lying? Anybody can do that. You don't need to be
Mhm.
particularly intelligent. You just need to be a bit of a sociopath or
Mm.
whoever doesn't care about lying. It's scary. It's a
Well,
scary. You're paying for this.
yeah.
Who's paying for this?
Yeah, well, and the psychological thing of it, that basically the point is that if you have an issue with a man who says he identifies as a woman showering next to you at your job or your gym or your family resort, then you know who
Right.
has the problem? You have the problem.
Yep.
Do the work.
Totally.
It's like, no, the problem is this craziness.
Right.
Ah,
And in case anybody's laboring under the delusion that these poor men, they just have to bring themselves to shower with women because of their terrible gender dysphoria and they're not enjoying it at all. It's harder for them than it is for us. You know, there have been documented incidents. You go look at them on Twitter, Reddit, of these men perfectly happy, enjoying themselves in the women's shower. They don't care what women they're showering with. They're just happy to be there. They're happy to see all the lovely lady naked bits, and it's not a poor them. It's probably scarier for them than it is for you. Like I've seen I've seen that kind of logic too. Like that's not the case.
no. Don't
No,
buy it.
don't buy it.
And to me, it doesn't even matter. So it's like, even if there's cases where all that sob story is true, still not
Mm,
our problem.
that's right.
The
That's right.
solution is not to put them in to pretend that there's male women. That's
No,
not the solution.
no, 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 no,
Um,
no.
anyway, and this lovely fellow. So let's see. Let me do this first. So here is 5 nurses who are not happy about being told that they need to shower with um, male coworkers who identify as women.
Mm,
Uh, which all that means is there's men who say that I identify as a woman. It's basically what it means,
yeah,
or where it's getting to mean. I don't know if they I doubt they're asking for a certificate for a gender certificate, but even then, as if the government issuing saying something like we recognize that this person has has a gender identity, which is just a statement.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
meaningless. Totally
Like it
meaningless.
doesn't change, it doesn't transmorgify their body like,
No,
like water into wine or the wafer into the body of Christ.
right?
It's
No,
not
no, for
literal.
sure. It's not transubstantiation. But yeah.
I mean, they want it to be. Um, I want to get my logo off here so I can see this.
Hmm,
So this is from this week, I think, or early last week. So breaking, the Secretary of State of Health and Social Care in the UK, Wes Streeting, has this
hmm.
week met with the Darlington nurses and said he's committed. Listen to this language that he has to use. He's committed to the belief that sex is biological, being reflected in the day-to-day running of the NHS under his watch.
Is
Everything's
this
a
a
belief
win?
now.
Is this kind of a win for the people that don't want a division of church and state in politics? I mean, I know that's kind of an aside, but that's just what it
Mhm.
made me think of. If it's
Mm,
kind of a win for them, right?
yeah.
Beliefs. I get to talk about my beliefs, right? I'm a politician and I
Not
get
just
to talk
talk
about
about it, but enact them.
yeah,
Yeah.
dangerous,
It's one thing
dangerous.
if you believe that you have that you have a it's one thing if you're a man and you believe that you have uh, a female or a woman gender identity, whatever it is. Um,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to act it out at work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, but it's just this idea that everything's a belief now, but they have to do this for the law, I think, because of protected beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, sex is a biological fact. There's two of them. We all know that. Well, we used to know it. Um, but he has to say it's a belief. So these women who believe they're women, their belief that they're women,
Right.
and that men can identify as women, this belief needs to be respected. Well,
Right.
when it gets really problematic, when that's a fact, and the other one is a pure, and I find I can't even give it the respect of even calling it a belief.
No. And they're nurses. They don't work with beliefs. Do you know? They work with facts. They work with biology. They work with reality. They
Mhm.
don't work with beliefs. Do you know? They don't. Sure, they make educated assumptions and stuff. Nurses are wonderful. I have total respect for nurses, but they don't. You know, they don't say, "Oh, I believe I can heal you today by doing." No, you know, they. It's a
Yeah.
non sequitur. Like their belief.
Mhm.
It's not about beliefs.
Mhm.
The whole subject doesn't. It's with beliefs. What does that mean?
Well, and
Doesn't
also
connect.
it's the idea that we have facts and we have beliefs. So beliefs are things. Yeah. Again, if you want, so it's not my belief that sex is biological and real because we can prove that we know that.
Yeah.
But and it'd be one thing if we couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt or or up to a reasonable threshold that gender identity is bullshit. That's also easy to prove, but there's interests in muddying those waters.
Oh, yeah,
But
totally.
whatever. Here's
Yeah,
where we
whatever.
are: the belief that sex is
Whatever.
biological. The belief. I believe that water's wet. I
Yeah,
believe that if I jump out the window, I'll fall to the ground.
right.
It's like,
I
okay, I
wish
do believe
West
that, but
yeah, I wish
even if
Wes
I
Streeting
didn't.
hadn't been participating in this stupid language nonsense too. Why didn't he I don't know anything about him, but why didn't he just say committed to the fact that sex
Well,
is
I think it's because
he
he's
just
in the Labor Day. They have to try to thread this needle. Yeah, because
I think people are getting tired of it.
their
Yeah.
position isn't, oops, our bad. I guess we shouldn't have codified this notion of gender identity in our policy. Oopsie.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, because it's not just them. There's this whole machine behind it. There's the people who want to embrace these identities. There's the
Right.
organizations that support them.
Sure, it was
There's
David Cameron
money in
brought it
it.
in, right? And
So
didn't you have
it's
10 years of his government without him in it, but 10 years and they didn't get rid of it? So everybody
yeah,
wants it. Let's just face it. Everybody wants it.
yeah. Or
Pays well.
they don't want to deal with going against it.
Hmm.
So the nurses are being supported. So here's the thing is that because most of so the nurses, they're not being supported by their union. Oh no. The nurses are being supported by the Christian Legal Center, who also handed in a Citizen Go petition signed by 48,000 people to number 10 Downing Street, calling for the government to do whatever is necessary to ensure women have access to single-sex changing rooms and toilets. The meeting,
Oh,
I mean, this is what we have to do. We have to do all this stuff, get
mhm.
signatures,
Right.
they need to be called names by their you know by the unions and others, and then and for what? Because they want single sex changing rooms and toilets
And
that
are
they
the
had up
Christian
until a couple of years ago.
right. No kidding. It's so stupid. So the Christian Legal Center is perhaps, and I don't know anything about it, perhaps they are taking this case because they're also invested in the belief, I'm using air quotes here, the belief, whereas maybe if it were some sort of non-religious legal fund that were helping them, they could argue for the, I mean, I'm just wondering how deeply we're pushing belief into this. Do you know if we're going to be able to are we going to be able to get it out?
That I don't know. That I don't
Yeah.
know. But the meeting followed a statement Mr. Streeting made in the lead up to the general election in June when he said on Twitter, X, that he was horrified by their case and wanted to meet.
Good.
Okay. Mr. Streeting gave the response after the nurses launched legal action against County Durham and Darlington NHS Trust over being forced to share a changing room with a man identifying as a woman. Darlington nurse and president of the DNU, Bethany Hutchinson, said, "We were nervous going into the meeting, but he put us at ease, gave us time and listened, which was encouraging. We now, however, need to see firm action from Wes and a clear consensus from the government and the NHS on these issues. Sadly, we continue to be treated appallingly by the trust. The policy they have in place is putting women at risk and is open to abuse and should be changed urgently. We have been shocked, however, to find that the rights of a man identifying as a woman continue to be supported and promoted, while ours as women have been ignored and even pushed out."
Yeah. It's called patriarchy.
We are not, okay. This is a quote. "We are not doing this just for nurses. We are doing this for women across the country. For example, those who are working in the police force, but also for sisters, daughters, and mothers everywhere." Andrea Williams, chief executive of the Christian Legal Center, said, a clear policy statement is required which reflects biological reality and protects women from this kind of upset and harm at work." So now we have in the upside downward, we have the Christian Legal Center standing up for reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although there are lots of churches that have also spout this stuff. So
Oh yeah, totally.
it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, you never know.
But this guy, Unison Steve, he's called now, who is the president of the union that the nurses belong to. He, of course, big surprise. Who do you think he's supporting?
Well, he's a he, him, so ding dong, I know. Yeah, I know who he's supporting. The men.
So in response to the article that was that covered the nurses meeting with Wes Streeting, he came out and basically with the trans flag and the fist and LGBTQ this and committed to inclusion and fighting transphobia and blah blah blah. But he has gotten a negative response to that, including from Jake Rowling and others. So now Steve has gone private. You can't see Steve's tweets unless he follows you. But Alan Johnson tweeted this. "This is why I left the left. Steve North, pronouns he, him, the male president of Unison, a 70% female union, says women workers have to accept that it's progressive, inclusive, and caring, you bad women, and compulsory, in quote, in parentheses, for women to accept mixed sex changing rooms and toilets in the workplace. Only bigots defend women-only spaces. The left, little short of lunatics." And this is what happens when class becomes decentered from the left and it becomes about any countercultural or disaffected, malcontent person who wants to queer some boundaries. So I agree.
Yeah. That's him, eh? The bald guy with the beard?
Yeah, that's the president of the union of the nurse. Again, 70. It's not surprising that 70% of nurses are female. But yeah, it's basically just like, sorry. It's progressive, inclusive, and caring. This is this language. Could they have come up with something better? And when we're in the thick of it, we have to get used to having to be like, well, too bad,
Yeah, that's right. We have to suck it up.
I
You have to
guess
be
I'm
nice.
not
You have to do
caring
your
and I'm
job.
exclusive and I'm not progressive. If this is what it means, then no, because there's something progressive or caring about
Hmm.
gender ideology in practice. Um, anyway, so
Let's put my stupid light back on.
and
It's
there's
in my
another one. Here's one more thing before we get into the amicus brief that Sex Matters submitted to the Scottish High Court. So
Katie
here's
John.
today I encounter here's from a person on X lady. Today I encountered a man, Katie John Went, in the women's toilets at Norwich Millennium Library during a children's book event.
God, why was he there?
So
Oh,
he
what's with
wrote a
his
children's
name?
book. And listen, here's where you get fat lady. Katie John Went is a transgender activist and educator. Because we need
Oh,
to be
sure.
educated to buy into this notion that men can identify as women, this notion that they're male women.
It's,
Got to be educated into that
what is the thing behind him? Don't judge a book
by its
by its
cover.
cover. Is that the name of
Probably
his little
that's probably
talk?
that. Maybe that's his book. Probably don't judge a book by its cover.
And then his name signals this kind of duper's delight. Katie John went, as in he went in your toilet. Haha,
Yeah,
John. He didn't even get the John
yeah,
out of his name, right?
yeah. And so this started another thing with these. It becomes these kinds of things over X, and so you have people who were wanting to support that and people who don't, and the businesses get in between, of course. So it's like, well, what's the policy here? Is this one of these gender neutral bathroom places where
Right.
all the bathrooms are gender neutral? Or what I've seen is also they'll have a men's room and a gender neutral room, which is which is two
I know.
men's rooms. Anyway,
Right. It's just the stupidest thing. The thing
hey,
is,
there's
is I've seen
confusion. Go ahead.
total. I've seen a couple of public, public feminists. I'm not going to denounce them. They can see whoever they want. They can do whatever they want. I'm not into denouncing, but I've seen them sort of saying, "Oh, he's a good one. She's a good one." I don't know what they're calling him, but they are building his reputation. They're saying that this one, Katie John, went in your toilet, is a nice one because he knows that he's really a man under all of his clothes. And don't buy it. He's just the same as the one that went to the bang face, smash face. What the hell was that
Yeah.
called? He's just the same as the ones who went, five of them, into the women's toilets at the smash face. It doesn't matter. Don't listen to what people say. Look at what they do, right? Like,
Mhm.
he was in the toilet too. He's not your ally, in my opinion. I'm not denouncing, but we have to face facts here.
So there's confusion.
Mm.
And the SNP, which is the Scottish National Party, has come out with 27 gender categories, from gender
Nice.
queer to pangender.
What's aughty gender? Do I want to know?
I
I don't
don't even
know.
know, but what you'll notice is man and woman aren't there.
No,
We're cisgender, I guess.
just cisgender.
So it's
Well,
like
I
the
don't want
male
to be on that
female,
list.
the male female's gone, but man woman's there. And I don't know what trans masculine, trans feminine. How is that? Then the trans man. It's all so crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I've seen that. That's an old one though, the trans mask, right?
Yeah.
I've seen that for ages, and that's where the women who are kind of tomboyish, but they're not 100% committed. I don't know.
In between phase,
There's
the
a
spectrum.
boutique gender for everybody, for every stage of. I mean, for them, it really is a
Mm.
spectrum, right? Like they're like Pantone genders. They really got one for everybody. It's
Yeah.
extremely, yeah, it's
Well, and if
extremely
this was just some
commodified.
fad or countercultural thing or whatever, I mean, now it's so mainstream.
Yeah.
The countercultural is also gender speak or big
Mm.
sister double speak, new
Mm.
speak. Fine, whatever. But since we don't, for some reason, we don't have a separation of church and of state and gender,
No, we don't.
and we have these policies and very reasonable necessary norms being transgressed or queer, whatever you want to call it, then that's when we take issue. So before I get into the amicus brief, I want to say I wanted to make sure that people knew what that was. So, there is a case going on in Scotland, and it's about what happens. Because it's basically the two laws that there's a law that talks about gender identity and gender identity recognition and all that, and then there's the Equal Rights or the Equal Protections Act that talks about that where sex, of course, is one of the protected characteristics. So when you have these policies passed, and if you have companies or organizations that are acting as if the policy on gender recognition or gender identity recognition supersedes or negates the other one, you get into all these problems at the level of bathrooms and changing rooms and all this stuff. So there's cases coming to the court, and the court's going to have to decide how to hash this out. But an amicus brief is a legal document written by a non-party to a legal case, offering information or arguments to assist the court in making its decision. So it's written. So an amicus brief is a written submission to a court from a non-party. So it's not the plaintiff or it's not the defendant or the plaintiff, but and it's called amicus curiae, which is Latin for friend of the court. I like that. I want to be the friend of the court. So the purpose of the amicus brief is to provide the court with information or arguments that the parties to the case may not have presented. They're typically filled at the appellate level. This is from the States, and also filled at the trial court level. Anyone or any organization with expertise or insight relevant to the case can file an amicus brief. For example, the American Psychological Association has filed nearly 250 amicus briefs based on psychological science and research. And the court doesn't have to. The court has discretion over whether to consider the amicus briefs or not. So that's what an amicus brief is. Because I bring that up because many organizations who are trying to protect women's rights and legal protections are aware that there's these cases coming up, and so one of the things they do is they file amicus briefs, and we're going to go over one that highlights that gives us an insight into the confusion that these policies have caused that end up playing out in bathrooms, changing rooms, and whatever. That it could be that that someone's trying to do the right thing. So who knows? So you get these policies, these policies passed about gender identity recognition, all this stuff, and then of course you have organizations that are activists who I'm sure are going out to educate or inform various sectors about how they can make sure that they're including their trans colleagues and customers and all this stuff, who may either not know or conveniently not mention how the need to balance this between women's rights and legal protections. So anyway, we'll see. Hopefully, well, it does. This amicus brief that Sex Matters submitted to the Scottish court will help clear out what some of the problems are. So, can you see this? Would you mind reading this, Tanya?
Sure. From the top?
Yeah.
Intervention to the Supreme Court on the definition of sex. Briefing on the intervention by Sex Matters. Sex Matters, represented by Ben Cooper KC and David Welsh, is intervening in the appeal in the case of 4 Women Scotland versus Scottish ministers, which will be heard by the Supreme Court on the 26th and 27th of November, 2024. The key question: should the meaning of sex, brackets, man-woman, in the Equality Act of 2010 be read as being modified by Section 9, brackets 1 of the Gender Recognition Act, which says that on obtaining a GRC, which is a Gender Recognition Certificate, quotation, If the acquired gender is the male gender, the person's sex becomes that of a man, and if it is the female gender, the person's sex becomes that of a woman.
Yes. All right. So here we are. What does sex mean? We argue that the Gender Recognition Act cannot, in fact, alter a person's biology or the related needs or the perceptions or beliefs of others, and these remain salient to the purposes of the Equality Act. So here's the two acts. Again, you had the Equality Act, and then later there was the Gender Recognition Act. So which one are people supposed to follow, and how do you deal with conflicts between the two? In enacting the Equality Act, Parliament chose to protect people from discrimination based on sex and gender reassignment as separate characteristics, which is already a problem. Anyway, and a reading of sex in the Equalities Act as being modified by gender recognition certificate is not necessary to meet the legislative purposes of either the Equality Act or the Gender Recognition Act. Would lead to absurd. A reading of sex in the Equalities Act is being modified by a gender recognition certificate. First of all, is not necessary to meet the legislative purposes of either act. Would lead to absurd, unjust, and irrational results. Would run counter to the legislative purposes of the Equality Act and would infringe on the rights of women and girls under Articles 8 and 10. Our experience and research highlights how uncertainty and ambiguity about the circumstances in which it is legitimate to treat biological women and girls as a distinct group has a practical effect that many organizations feel inhibited from doing so at all or compelled to adopt a self-ID approach. And I think this is obviously quite true. We see this playing out everywhere. You know, that a lot of companies or organizations are thinking it's just the easiest way to go. Just be like, okay, well, self-ID and okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess when people have an issue with it, then of course people aren't going to want to get into that. So if they can quiet it down, or and then of course people will self-censor because people don't want to. And women don't want to be, and girls don't want to be called, transphobes or bigots or mean or all that stuff. And if you see people around you going along with it, and you see people in positions of authority going along with it, it becomes difficult to stand up against it. But fortunately, there are people who are doing so. Okay, so Tanya?
Can man and woman have variable meanings across the act? The previous judgment suggested that the meanings of man and woman may vary across the Equality Act. We disagree. The term sex and related expressions must be given a consistent meaning across the whole of the Equality Act. The principles of statutory interpretation, the context of the statute as a whole is important. Words should be given a constant and predictable interpretation. A statutory definition has the effect that whenever this expression is used in this act, this is what it means. And the other box, in relation to the Equality Act, the protected characteristics provide the foundations for the whole architecture of the Equality Act. The protected characteristics of sex is defined by reference to man and woman, and the Act provides definitions for man and woman.
Can you believe we have to do this? Okay. What's next? What's the next obvious thing we're gonna have to go through this whole process with? Who knows?
Okay.
Okay. So again, continuing with the sex matters amicus brief that they submitted to the Supreme Court in Scotland. The purpose of both the Equality Act and the Gender Recognition Act must be considered. We argue that Section 9(1) of the Gender Recognition Act is a deeming provision. The law on deeming provisions tells us that they should be applied only insofar as it is necessary to achieve their purpose, and not so far as to produce unjust, absurd, and anomalous results. So, of course, this means to me is that a lot is going to depend on what is determined to be unjust, absurd, or an anomalous result, and what's necessary. So, what do organizations need? What's necessary to have this for gender recognition, which is basically if you have a gender recognition certificate, you're a man who now can be recognized as well. Basically, this is the problem: is that if a man goes in and gets a gender recognition act, then I can understand why he and other people assume that means okay. Well, then we treat them as if they're a woman,
Of
which of
course.
course leads to problems.
It's like if you get a
Yes
hunting
or not?
license, right? If you get a hunting license and someone's like, "Hey, what are you doing shooting all these pheasants?" Like, "Well, I've got a hunting license. What do you expect me to do with it?
Yeah.
I'm
What
going to
is
use
it
it."
if not basically a license to get into places where men would not be typically allowed into?
No. You buy the license. You pay for the hunting license. If you're
Yeah.
not going to use it, then why do you have it? It's not like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I need this hunting license to feel good about myself." No, you bought it. You're using it. You filled it out. You did all that
Yeah.
work. You went to the bureau. I don't
Yeah.
have a hunting license, by the way. Just popped into my head.
Yeah, I don't
But
have a GRA. I don't my gender has not been recognized.
no,
Um
right? Can you imagine?
It'd be a bit redundant. Anyway, okay, so again, the deeming provision is a legal term, and so laws that
Mm,
are deeming that are so this act, the Gender Recognition Act, is a deeming provision, and that means it's supposed to be implied only insofar necessary to achieve their purposes, whatever that is, and not to produce unjust, absurd, or anomalous results. So is necessary to achieve the purposes of either the so is it necessary to achieve the purposes of either the Gender Recognition Act or the Equality Act? Or would it undermine the purposes, coherence, or effectiveness of the law otherwise produce unjust, absurd, or anomalous results? So my guess is what they're saying is whatever the case, whatever the issue
mm,
is let's say is letting men with a gender recognition with a who identify as women
mm,
and who have this piece of paper that the government says, okay, we recognize that you want to identify as a woman. So
mm,
is this necessary to achieve the purpose of either the act, or would it
mm,
undermine it?
mm,
So Gender Recognition Act addresses the okay, I'm going to be serious. So the Gender Recognition Act addresses the difficulties and anomalies resulting from a lack of legal recognition for
mm.
transsexual people in relations with the state, such as marriage, pensions, retirement, and Social Security. Okay. The Equality Act of 2010 prevents unfavorable treatment of individuals because of their protected characteristics by employers, service providers, and others. Okay,
Right.
that seems clear. So, Tanya?
Clarity about how to identify the relevant groups is crucial for the group-based rights and protections to operate effectively. The group-based rights and protections, such as indirect discrimination, positive action, the public sector equality duty, and the exceptions that allow single-sex services, sports, associations, and charities, recognize that a group who share a particular characteristic have common experiences, needs, and disadvantages. It is a need of both sexes, brackets, but particularly women, to have privacy from members of the opposite sex in situations of undressing and bodily contact, unless they consent otherwise. Our submissions consider how a S9 bracket 1 reading of sex in the Equality Act compared with a biological reading would affect 1. The composition and coherence of the relevant groups in terms of their shared characteristics, interests, and needs. 2. The ability of duty bearers, such as employers and service providers, to identify and coherently analyze the effects of their policies and practices on the relevant groups.
So, let's see. Um, Applying the GRA, Gender Recognition Act, to Equality Act produces absurd effects. Applying the reading of sex in the Equality Act would mean the reference to a woman would include most biological females and some biological males. while reference to men would include most biological males and some biological females. There is nothing that a group of some females plus some male people with the certificate have in common beyond state documentation. This leads to absurd results. Yes.
Totally.
And the thing is here is where the people are focusing on the legal front in particular is, and some of us may not think about this if we haven't had to, that it's very important for laws to be precise.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
It's the weight of law and being able to know who it applies to and who it doesn't, and when you're breaking it and when you're not. Seems kind of important.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Anyway. Could Parliament... So they ask, could Parliament have really intended that biological women and girls, or men and boys, are not protected by group-based rights and protections? That duty bearers are regulated by reference to categories that can only be ascertained by knowledge of a confidential certificate? That people with protected characteristics of gender reassignment are considered differently depending on whether they possess a certificate? This is also the thing. So if you have a certificate, then you're this. If not, you're not. Okay. So, okay. So that's basically the brunt. There's more to this amicus brief, and if you go to the Sex Matters website, you can see it and the other ones that they filed. But this is basically the gist of it.
Yeah, this is maybe laid out for us on the internet, right? Because they've got all the little blocks.
Yeah. And to me, it's just quite clear. And this is the thing, is it's such an obvious contradiction, especially in law, and when it, and when it matters, is that you cannot have women being adult human females, and also men who identify as women. How is that going to work?
Right.
Unless you really convince yourself that there are two types of women that are equal, that have equal standing to the category of woman, which in itself is mystical. But anyway. But I really liked how this is really, and so, but and another reason why I wanted to bring this up is because you can understand why there's so much confusion.
Yeah.
Even though I would hope that if I had a business or was responsible for, whatever I'm responsible for, that the person that makes the decision, for example, to change the women's room to a gender neutral room would think about it a second.
Yeah.
But who knows? You could have people that come in and it's like, and we know that, especially with human resources and all that, there's organizations like Stonewall that go out and basically turf everybody with how they can be, to make sure they're in compliance with these policies.
Yeah.
And if they
get scores, right?
Yeah. And if all they're telling people about is the GRA or other things and not this, and if the people don't know until there's a kerfuffle,
right?
And then if people don't want to put their head in the sand or they don't want to deal with it, then eventually it goes to court. And so now I think this is what we're going to see, not just in Scotland, but all over any place that has these contradictions. This is going to be playing out in court. Unfortunately, that takes some time, but they're going to have to. And it isn't that convenient. Sometimes I wonder if you would agree, if the politicians that realize what a mess they've created just want to wait it out and let the courts hash it out for them, so they don't have to take the loss or the blame.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I'm sure there are. I think that there are. I mean, I know I'm super cynical, but I think that there are some who understand that things went too far and are expecting and happy with them just moving back to not where we were before, when things were normal, men were men, women are women, no confusion, but to a different place where, some men, even though we're not calling them women, we're not touching kids, but some of these men have certain special. I'm a little cynical. I think some people went crazy just so that we could move back to a different spot than we were at the beginning and seem rational. Does that make sense?
Could be, yeah. Who knows?
Without me explaining it for 30 years badly.
No, well,
And yeah, and then
we're
there's some who just
we're figuring this out as we go. It's hard to process
totally.
what's happened and what's happening.
Right.
So it's not surprising that
Like I know that
we're at a loss of words
right.
sometimes.
When the Japanese government passed the gender policy after a lot of lobbying by the US ambassador Rahm Emanuel, when the lawmakers when they went to vote, a bunch of them went to the toilet and they didn't vote. They said they had a stomach ache. In Japan, when you have a stomach ache, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you got a stomach ache. Jesus, we better go take care of that." So instead of being, it's like it reminded me of those old stories of, someone didn't want to swear allegiance to the king or the feudal lord, so didn't turn up and had made some excuse, right? And so here
Mhm.
you have lawmakers, instead of voting yes or no, they just like, oh, sorry, toilet,
Yeah.
stomach ache. I mean, that's
Mm.
that's insane. That's
Yeah.
insane. That's totally insane.
Yeah. Well,
Seriously, that's
just
insane.
us crazy humans. But anyway, so this is going to be having to be worked out. And then
Mm,
of course there's the ultras
yeah.
who are saying like the end goal here is for the GRA to be annulled, that there should be no thing about recognizing gender reassignment or identities in law because it's immaterial. Um,
Yeah.
and there's those like you said who are probably want to find some sort of middle ground,
Right.
which is and we'll see if it's as appealing if it's not an all access pass to Womantown. And
When
it's
you put
again
it
something
that
that
way,
people don't
we all
understand
want
when they're like, we just have separate categories. It's like, yeah, they don't want that.
it. Mhm.
The
They don't
men
want
who
it.
want to identify as women and have people
Yeah.
go along with that don't want a separate category. They want to be with the women.
Right. That's right.
So
That's right.
go talk to them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't be confused, people.
Yeah. Or else they would say I'm a transhuman. They wouldn't say I'm a trans woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not
No,
asking
you know
for a
what? I
separate
don't I don't
category.
believe
They're
it.
asking to be treated like women. So that's the problem.
Just imagine the state that you would have to be in to walk out of your house in a crazy costume. Like imagine that you were going to spend all of your days dressed as Spider-Man or something. It makes sense. It would take for me, possibly for you, it would take such a lot of sort of inner talk to get myself to the point where I want to go out dressed like Spider-Man. And
Live
then
your
if
truth.
people aren't going to call me Spider-Man after I've gone to this point, no, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't connect. I've done all
Yeah.
this work to get myself here. These men are going out dressed like, they're a lot of times they're dressed like their dead wives, for God's sake. They look ridiculous.
Yeah.
They got there by they had a goal. They worked, they're not like
Hmm.
couch potatoes. They
Hmm.
No, they want to be in our spaces. They do. That's
Hmm.
just the way it is.
Yeah. And then we
All of them.
opened up
Even the ones
gender.
who are like, I
People
know
opened
I'm
up.
a man.
Yeah. People opened up Pandora's gender box because now it's like, well, it's
Yeah,
a gender identity. It's your truth. You're stunning
right.
and brave. And how
It's right. It's
terrible that
exactly
some of
it's
these
Pandora's
women,
box.
aren't welcome you into the sisterhood.
No, no, no. No, for sure.
Mean ladies.
Right? All those women who just they didn't even want to be women. They just happened to accidentally be women. And
Yeah.
here I am
Because
trying my hardest to be a woman, and you don't want to let me be a woman by doing the most womanly thing possible, which is going to the toilet and taking a picture of myself with my foot on the sink. That's what
yeah.
they all do.
This whole
Yeah,
thing, it sounds like a bad Porky's. I don't know if you remember the Porky's movies,
I remember. I
but
never saw them,
there'd
but
always be these, the movies where there'd be like a hole there'd be
mhm,
a hole that
mhm.
someone had made so they could peek into the girl's shower. And I can just see
Right?
this. It's like, this kind of weird fantasy that you have the nurse's shower, the nurse's shower, changing room, and some guy in there who's decided that he's, a lady on the inside who just gets to play around with the. I mean, it's just
Yeah. No kidding. And then you think of all of the sly hidden camera pornography that they take in East Asia, especially Japan, Korea, China. You see all these. There's a BBC documentary on the iPlayer right now. These men who put in cameras in places where they shouldn't be. Men shouldn't even have access to women's toilets to clean them necessarily, right? Like, there's a whole industry. Like, millions of people are paying for access to these websites to watch these kinds of, hidden camera toilet pornography. Like, we have to get more rigid about men in our spaces, not less, more.
Yes. Well, and that's why we used to have, and they probably still have them, although I don't know why, if it's a gender neutral bathroom, but you'll see those things when there'll be a sign that says, like, they'll let you know that that the bathroom's being cleaned. So that there could be somebody in there who's not female or male.
Right.
They still do that. I mean, it's like the confusion.
Right.
Anyway, here's someone, Candace Jackson. She's also a lawyer. She's great. I follow her on X. She's really great about this, helping us find the language to combat, to keep our sanity and to keep clear about this. Would you mind reading these two tweets of Candace's, Tanya?
Sure. October 28th. There is no false statement of fact that is both as provably, categorically false and as universally dangerous to act upon than male people can become female people. Example, the earth is flat meets the first part, but it's hard to argue it meets the second part. And the next is, I don't see the date, but
it's the same day.
She says, same day, 10 hours. Okay. Gender dysphoria is extremely painful, end quote. Okay, but creating health dysfunction and scrapping sex classification still isn't something any ethical free society does. Dysphoria is distress. Life is full of it. Put resources into resilience and coping, not ego-thoratic reality denial. Theocratic. Oh my God.
Ego-theocratic.
I can't even read her tweet.
Well, it's
Ego-theocratic. You learn something every day.
Yeah. Well, it's probably a neologism. She's probably making up for this. Ego-theocratic reality denial. Yeah. My ego's.
It's an awesome word.
It is very good. Yeah. But she's really great at putting it into, she's also a lawyer, but she's very great at putting it into articulating it for us. Because it's true. So if people want to believe the earth is flat, okay, that's fine. But if people want to put into practice male people can be, that there's male women, that's going to cause issues.
Right.
Just like if you believe in the Easter Bunny is one thing. If you want people to believe that you're the Easter Bunny.
Yeah.
So you can go hide eggs in their houses. That's a different thing.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway. Oh, and here's some, well, funny, not so funny. We'll end up with this, a couple of things that made me laugh, even though they're not really, the underlying premise isn't funny. So
I have to laugh.
Somebody posted this, trans elder Marty. So an old trans dude. My friend found this in a local bar. Trans lives matter more than cis feelings. And Billy Bragg is a great TERF. By which he means he wrote it and took a picture.
Yeah.
And another thing about appropriation with like the mimics or the like the body snatchers is that anything that we any phrase or expression that we use on our side, they just turn around. So for a long time, it was like that women's lives, or like, reality, like women's reality matters more than men's feelings, or this or that. So they just turn around and just use it.
Totally. Totally.
So it's like it's like, can you guys have anything authentic or what?
No.
Anyway,
they can't. They totally can't. And just look at them. I mean, you've heard trans misogyny, right? What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Trans misogyny. Not what you think it does.
And here's one. You've been trying to conceive. Here, this is from a doctor, some fertility specialists. 2 ladies, by the way. Thanks, ladies. Or I'm assuming, by their name. This is so fantastic. You've been trying to conceive for 12 months with regular unprotected intercourse, and the partner with eggs is less than 35 years old. The woman?
It sounds like the person who's done the shopping and is coming home with, with the groceries. Who's the one who brought the
I mean,
eggs?
I almost wonder if they put this into Chat GPT and said, "Can you make it gender neutral?" I mean, this idea, the partner with eggs, who is that?
Right. Well,
who is the only partner that has the eggs?
It's so stupid. There's that Simone de Beauvoir quote about, if there weren't people complicit, then we wouldn't have a regime. Well, I'm not going to quote it, but that's what she said. It takes people complicit.
Yeah.
No kind of regime functions without complicit help.
And it's just so like, there's nothing they can do that's going to that you can no matter how much you believe in your gender identity, as the opposite, that no, if you're a guy and you really believe that you have this, you want to say you identify as a woman, no matter how much you believe in that, or what certificate the state gives you, or what procedures you have done, you will never ever be the partner with the eggs. Unless you've secured a surrogate. But this is not what they're talking about. Like unprotected intercourse, of course, you wouldn't be having that, I would assume. Who knows what's going on? But it's just like, yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a new one for me. Partner with eggs.
Yeah, I've never heard that one either. I guess that's to flatter the man who thinks he's a woman, right? Because he's a woman with no eggs. That's a man without any sort of interventions to stop his fertility, who's pretending to be a woman, or it's for a woman who's pretending to be a man, who also, she's doing the most female thing possible, using her eggs to bear life, but she can't deal with being called a mother. It's just so stupid.
And also, this is what's ridiculous, is that I am quite sure that most of the people that go to fertility doctors are not people who identify as the opposite sex. So who is this for? I mean, it's just, we have to, and this is where Jennifer Billick comes in. It's like, why is there this push to de-sex language?
Yeah.
Even when it's talking about procreation.
Right. Well, she might have something to say about that too.
Sexual reproduction, they want to have gender neutral language. It's just like, why?
Right. Yeah. Well,
and these two ladies are, medical doctors. They're not, so it just shows that, experts can be, can also go along to get along and convince themselves of all kinds of crap if it's in their interests.
Are they crazy or are they just doing what's logical for them, which is drumming up more business? Because when you've blocked all the puberty of all these kids, right, then you're going to need to have more of these kinds of egg retrievals and stuff, right? When you blocked all the puberty of these kids, you're going to need more fertility clinics. Because, they need to freeze their eggs, right? Before you block their puberty.
Yeah. And my thing is, if I needed a reproductive endocrinologist and I was shopping around and I saw this ad, I would not go to them unless they were the only person I could go to. And then I think I would say, what the hell's with partner with the eggs?
Yeah. No, you wouldn't go to them, but if you were a man pretending to be a woman, you might. Or a woman
here's
who's too sensitive to be called a mother.
Here's another one where the TRAs, the Church of Gender, think they get us. So Wave Bird, whoever this is, said, "What is a sandwich? Do hot dogs qualify? What is soup? Does cereal and milk qualify? Looking forward to hearing your very objective definition of these words." So Sal Grover responds, "Literally the only reason you can write that tweet and expect it to be understood is because every word you typed has an objective meaning."
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point.
But I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this because you've been turfing for a while. Some of the things they think they get us on are just like, really? You really think you said something there?
Well, this is the first one. This is a new one for me. I've never seen that before. At least it's fresh, right? I mean, the
Mhm.
old, oh, what about your own home toilet? Does everybody use that's
Yeah.
a,
Or what about
or they
clownfish?
put
Well, we're not clownfish, we're
right,
mammals.
right. Those ones like, can we're almost 2025. Let's
You think you're a
modern but this one
clownfish?
is fresh to me, so
And this one was this is the last one. It was funny. So
Devin Little.
Devlin Little, I'll let you read this out. Or I'll ask you
Oh,
to.
God, Devin. Devin Little, she, her. There is a special place in hell reserved for cis women who terrorize trans women. And then, I
I'm
know.
a damsel in
I don't know.
distress. Please
I
save
don't know
me.
if Devin Little. I don't know if Devin Little is a man or a woman either. Don't forget that a lot of these accounts are filtered. They put the filters on. And then here's Dan T. Copeland. I've seen him around for years. He says, if there was such a place, trans women would demand access, so it wouldn't be reserved for long. Well, yeah, good point. Good point.
That made me laugh. What we have, like, yeah,
Beautiful.
like as if men who identify as women would let women have any place that was reserved for them.
No kidding. No kidding.
Go,
No,
Dan T. Copeland.
yeah, it's a great comment. Self-made Dan.
So,
You see what happens with a man who's, not confused about his identity, and he takes a photo like that. His profile picture is like, a cat up in the, and then you've got the man, and I'm assuming Devin Little is a man. I don't care. I'm going to do that. And then you got the man who is, a special kind of lady, and he's using all the filters and got the
mm,
pronouns and
mhm.
makes
Yeah,
the
so try
brain.
to gird yourself, people, because the language is how it starts, you
Yeah,
know,
totally.
and our
It's always
how we think
language.
about things and the words we hear, even if you know the truth, it starts to affect you.
Mm,
Yeah.
totally.
Especially when you find yourself compelled to have to speak around this stuff,
Yeah,
and
don't do
say
it.
things like biological women and biological men, where it's just like, serious, even that, I'm like, ugh.
Right.
But yeah, so if you can, try to find the strength to not buy into big sister gender speak.
Yeah.
Um,
Resist.
and if you can't, because it's not easy,
Mm,
there's people who support those who can, even if it's just a like or a retweet or a nice note. Or for those who have money, there's usually crowdfunders, because it takes a lot of. There's not always lawyers and whatnot who can do this kind of pro bono work, or who are willing to take on
right.
um, this juggernaut. And this is another contradiction, that we're constantly told that it's a very oppressed group and this minority. However, they have no shortages of resources and power centers who support them. So it's a bit,
Right.
that the nurses who want women only showers at work uh, get smeared by the union and no support, and and the people that come to their legal aid is a Christian legal center. Thank goodness for
Mm.
them.
Yeah, no
Says
kidding.
something.
You to them.
Says something.
Yeah.
Um, but the left, and they really care. Who would say that the left really care about women? Really care about women, except for this, which is the most pressing issue, I think, that cuts across all the other stuff. Not that not of course that reproductive rights are important. Anyway, Tanya,
Mm.
thank you, love.
Thank you. Happy
And so
Halloween.
happy Halloween, yes. And so next we have there's one, we're going to do another focus on the law, because there's a Supreme Court case that's coming up around kids. So a court case that started in Tennessee, I think, that's being taken to the Supreme Court. We'll see if the Supreme Court decides that
Right.
there's a right that the state can't ban um, so-called very euphemistically, gender-affirming care for minors, because there's states, thank goodness, in the states that are starting to put bans on, saying like, no, you're not going to give minors puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or cut off healthy no kind of genital rearrangement. And
Yeah.
so the ACLU is one of the people who are bringing this case to the Supreme Court, saying, no, this is an infringement on the rights of parents and it's discrimination against quote unquote trans kids.
Right.
So we'll see.
Right. Who's funding that? That's right.
Yeah. So we'll see what's going on there, because I think it does, especially the amicus briefs are less legalese, I think, than the other court documents, but it gives us, I think it's worthwhile to do this to understand how it's playing out in law, because it seems that this is going to be, maybe even before the culture starts to turn, maybe the tide's going to turn most pronounced in the courts. Hopefully, who knows?
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. All right. Thank
It's
you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Do you have
so
anything
much.
you want to say? Oops. Do you have anything you want to say before you go off into the night?
No.
No?
Happy Halloween to all of you. Be
Happy
safe. Don't eat
Halloween.
any unwrapped sweets.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks, Tanya.
Bye.
All right. So this is another morbid symptoms, sex versus gender identity war update on the legal front. And we dove into the problems that happened when the contradiction of women being adult human females and being men who say they identify as women clash in reality, in terms, and we saw that in bathrooms, particular, whether in nurses' changing rooms and shower rooms, bookshops and whatever, and this is starting to play out or being hashed out in law. How a society, how societies, how we're supposed to interpret these contradictory notions of gender identity and sex. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please do like, subscribe, share, etc. If you have a morbid symptom you think we should be covering, please let me know. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please let me know. Or if you have somebody else you think would be a good guest on this or other morbid symptoms that we're covering, please let me know. And if you are somewhere where they celebrate Halloween, or you're celebrating Halloween, please have a good, safe, and fun Hallows Eve. See you next time. Thank you.